7 years. That is how long Cleo shared a bed with the most frightening creature in all of Europe. Yet he never touched her, even one single time. She thought Benedict Schuyler hated her. She was wrong. Because tonight, the Vampire King is on his knees. He is begging for just one small taste of her. The whole world knew Benedict Schuyler as a rich British man who was hard to find. He owned big houses and land all across the Scottish Highlands. He also controlled almost all the shipping and transport business in Europe. But the Shadow World was different. The Shadow World was the secret group of night creatures who stayed hidden from regular people. In that world, everyone knew Benedict as the king of the Northern Covens. He was a vampire with very old and very scary power. Cleo Penelope Hastings was his wife. Their marriage did not come from love. It came from a deal written in blood and paper. 7 years earlier, Cleo's father, Richard Hastings, lost all the money from their old family home. That home had belonged to their family for hundreds of years. Even worse, he stole money from the Schuyler Syndicate. The rule for stealing from vampires was a slow and painful death. To save his own life, Richard made a special agreement. The Hastings family had no money left, but their bloodline was pure and noble. They came from a long line of high-born humans. Cleo was only 18 years old. One dark night, people put her into a black car and drove her to Schuyler Manor. They traded her like money to pay off her father's debt. Cleo had readied herself for a monster. She had readied herself for pain and for being used as a living blood bag by a night creature. But the real life of her marriage was a much crueler kind of mental pain. Benedict Schuyler never touched her at all. For 2,555 nights, they shared the same huge bed with soft silk sheets in his main bedroom. Benedict was very handsome. He looked like a fallen angel with sharp, noble features. His eyes were silver gray and bright. His hair was dark. Yet he treated Cleo as if she were made of poisonous glass. Every night, he came to bed many hours after midnight. His skin felt as cold as stone. He always lay stiff and still on the far edge of the mattress. If Cleo moved in her sleep, and even 1 inch of her skin touched his, he would jump. He would get up right away and lock himself in his study for the rest of the night. At first, Cleo felt happy about this. She felt safe. But as the years passed one after another, that happy feeling turned into deep and shameful pain. She was his wife only in name. She went with him to big midnight parties. She smiled for the cameras and for the watching eyes of the vampire court. She wore the bright and costly Schuyler diamonds around her neck. But behind the closed wooden doors of their home, she was like a ghost. She saw how the other vampires looked at her. Vivian Carmichael was Benedict's second in command. Vivian made sure Cleo knew exactly what her untouched status meant. "You are a rotting piece of property, Cleo," Vivian said one evening in the manor's library. She swirled a glass of thick red wine. 7 years, and he has not taken even 1 drop of your blood. He has not claimed you. A human wife who stays unmarked is a human wife who is not wanted. Everyone in the syndicate is laughing. We are just waiting for the day he gets bored and throws you into the freezing lake. Those words planted a dark seed of worry deep in Cleo's chest. Did Benedict find her ugly? Was her blood somehow bad? She spent hours looking into her mirror. She pulled at her skin. She checked every small flaw. She wondered why the man she was legally married to looked at her with such tight control. Or was it dislike? The moment that almost broke her mind happened just 3 weeks before her 25th birthday. She was in the estate's glass greenhouse. She was cutting a bush of rare black roses that Benedict had brought from Turkey. The thorns were sharp and mean. Her hand slipped. A sharp thorn cut deep into the soft part of her index finger. She gasped and dropped the scissors. Bright red blood rose to the surface and dripped softly onto the marble floor. Suddenly the air in the greenhouse turned very cold. She turned and saw Benedict standing in the doorway. He had just come back from a syndicate meeting in Paris. He still wore his fine dark suit, but he was not looking at her face. His silver eyes were locked on the drop of blood on her finger. The change in him was terrifying. The white parts of his eyes turned completely black. The veins under his pale skin grew dark and spread across his cheekbones. His jaw moved a little as his long fangs came down. He took one step toward her like a hunter. A low, deep growl came from his chest. It was a sound that made every human survival feeling inside her scream in fear. "Benedict," she whispered. She held her bleeding hand against her chest. "I cut myself. It's okay." He took another step. He closed the space between them in a flash of superspeed. Suddenly, he stood right over her. His chest rose and fell hard. She could smell the cold air and expensive cologne on him. For one short second, she thought he was finally going to take her. She thought the 7-year wait was over. She tilted her neck to the side, giving in. A strange mix of fear and deep longing washed over her. Instead, Benedict squeezed his eyes shut. His fists clenched so hard at his sides that she heard the bones in his knuckles crack. "Get out," he snarled. His voice was rough and broken. It sounded nothing like her calm husband. "Benedict, please." "I said get out, Cleo," he roared. He slammed his fist into the strong glass wall of the greenhouse. The glass shattered into a million shining pieces. "Leave my sight before I do something we will both be sorry for." Tears filled her eyes. The shame was complete. She ran from the greenhouse. She left him standing among the broken glass. She was fully sure that her husband was violently disgusted by her very existence. She did not know then that his reaction was not disgust. It was the painful, barely held-back control of a starving man. He was fighting his own demons to keep her alive. The night of her 25th birthday came. It was marked by the biggest and richest party the Shadow World had seen in 10 years. The party was held at the Schuyler Tower. That tower was a tall spike of black glass in the heart of London. To the human world, it was a special charity ball. To the vampires, it was a high-stakes political meeting to renew the borders of their lands. For Cleo, it was a deadline. In vampire stories and rules, 25 was the age when a human wife became fully grown. If a noble human bloodline stayed unclaimed by this age, the marriage deal could be legally ended. The human could be thrown away or claimed by someone else. Cleo stood in front of the mirror in the penthouse dressing room. She wore a blood-red silk dress that hugged every curve of her body. The back of the dress dipped low. Her dark hair was pulled up, showing the long, pale line of her neck. She wore no jewelry at all. She left the space where a vampire's mark should be completely empty on purpose. It was an act of quiet rebellion. It was a silent challenge to the husband who refused to look at her. When she walked down the grand staircase into the ballroom, all the talking stopped. Hundreds of immortal eyes turned toward her. Their looks were hungry, calculating, and mocking. She found Benedict standing near the grand piano. He was talking with a Russian coven leader. He looked extremely handsome in a black tuxedo. When his eyes met hers, a muscle moved in his jaw. His gaze grew darker as it swept over her bare skin. But, as always, he looked away first. He offered her no smile. He offered no hand to guide her down the stairs. She swallowed the lump in her throat and stepped into the nest of snakes, alone. The night was a blur of forced smiles and dodging hungry advances from foreign vampires. They all knew her husband had not claimed her. As the hours moved closer to midnight, she found herself trapped on the outdoor terrace. It overlooked the shining lights of London. "You look like a lamb, waiting to be killed, Cleo." She turned and saw Dominic Schuyler step out of the shadows. Dominic was Benedict's younger brother who had been sent away. Where Benedict was cold and controlled, Dominic was wild and chaotic. His eyes were a mocking icy blue. He had been banned from the London court years ago, but the big meeting had given him temporary permission to return. "Leave me alone, Dominic," she said. She wrapped her arms around herself against the cold wind. He did not listen. He moved closer and trapped her against the glass railing. "You really do not know, do you?" he murmured. A cruel smile played on his lips. "You think he does not want you. I see the way you look at him, Cleo, like a sad puppy begging for a scrap of kindness. My marriage is none of your business." "But it is," Dominic whispered. He leaned in so close she could feel the cold coming from him. "Because at midnight you turn 25. The treaty ends. He has not claimed you, Cleo, because he is waiting for the legal way to throw you out. He hates your father. When he looks at you, he only sees the man who stole from us." Her heart pounded hard against her ribs. "You are lying." "Am I?" Dominic reached out. He trailed a freezing finger down the side of her neck. She shuddered and tried to pull away, but his grip on the stone railing trapped her. "You are an unmarked Hastings. Your blood is a special treat. When Benedict ends the bond at midnight, you will be free for anyone to take, and I think I will claim you for myself just to hurt him." Before she could scream, a heavy, choking silence fell over the terrace. The normal noise of the London traffic seemed to disappear. "Remove your hand from my wife, Dominic." The voice was terrifyingly calm, but it shook with a deadly frequency. Benedict stood in the terrace doorway. He had taken off his tuxedo jacket. His tie was loose. His eyes were no longer silver. They were the deep, terrifying black of a fully ready predator. Dominic smirked and dropped his hand from her neck. "Just keeping her entertained, brother, though I suppose she will be my problem in about 20 minutes anyway." In a fraction of a second, Benedict crossed the terrace. There was a sickening crack as he drove his fist into Dominic's throat. He lifted his brother completely off the ground by the neck and slammed him over the edge of the glass railing. Dominic hung hundreds of feet above the London streets. His eyes were wide with sudden fear. "If you ever breathe in her direction again," Benedict hissed, his fangs fully shown, "I will tear your head from your shoulders and mail it to your exile in pieces. Do you understand me?" He did not wait for an answer. Benedict threw Dominic back onto the terrace floor like a rag doll. Then he turned to Cleo. His chest heaved. His control was completely broken. He grabbed her wrist with a grip that bruised and burned like dry ice. He pulled her off the terrace. He ignored the gasps of the watching aristocrats as they marched through the ballroom and straight into the private elevators. The ride up to the penthouse felt like it was choking her. She was shaking. Tears spilled down her cheeks. Dominic's words echoed in her mind. "He is waiting for the legal way to throw you out." The elevator doors opened. He pulled her down the hallway and pushed her into his private rooms. He locked the heavy oak doors behind them with a final click. "So, this is it?" she sobbed. The 7 years of rejection finally boiled over into pure anger. "Midnight is here. Are you finally going to kill me, Benedict? Or are you just going to throw me out onto the street, like your brother said? Tell me." Benedict stood by the locked door. His hands trembled hard. He looked like a man being burned alive from the inside. He dropped to his knees. The king of the northern covens, the most feared creature in the shadow world, fell onto the floor at her feet. "Cleo," he choked out. His voice was a raw, broken plea. "Please." She froze. "Please what?" He looked up at her. His terrifying black eyes swam with tears that had not fallen yet. "Please, let me claim you. Let me taste you. I have starved for 7 years, Cleo. If I do not take your blood right now, I am going to lose my mind." She stared down at the man who commanded armies of immortals. He was the ruthless billionaire who could crash the European economy with one phone call. Benedict Schuyler was kneeling on the Persian rug of their penthouse. His fine shirt was wrinkled. His breathing was rough. The pure openness in his terrifying pitch-black eyes broke every idea she had built over the last 7 years. Starved? She whispered. Her voice shook as she took a small step backward. What are you talking about? You have access to the best blood banks in the world. You are the king. Ordinary blood is ash in my mouth, Benedict rasped. His hands gripped the edges of his own pants, as if fighting the urge to reach out and grab her ankles. The moment I signed that marriage treaty, the moment our souls were bound by syndicate law, my body locked onto yours. A king mates for life, Cleo. Once the vow is sealed, we can only get true strength from our spouse. For 7 years, I have lived on the absolute smallest amount of fake plasma, just to keep my heart beating. It tastes like dust. It gives no strength. Her mind spun as she tried to understand the size of his confession. If that is true, why did you not just bite me? Why treat me like a disease? You made me feel completely worthless, Benedict. I thought you hated me. Benedict squeezed his eyes shut. A sound of deep pain tore from his throat. When he opened them again, the blackness was fading. It was replaced by the piercing silver she knew so well. Those eyes were bright with tears that had not fallen. Because if I had tasted a single drop of your blood before your 25th birthday, it would have killed us both in the most painful way possible, he said. His voice dropped to a heavy, broken whisper. He slowly rose to his feet. He kept a careful distance between them. He walked over to a heavy oak desk and poured a glass of amber scotch with hands that shook clearly. Your father, Richard, did not just steal a few million from my shipping companies, Benedict explained. He drank the liquor in one swallow. He found a secret book of records during a business deal with the Astor Estates. He discovered the truth about the Hastings bloodline. You are not just human nobles, Cleo. Your family carries a very rare gene change that the old ones called the Siren's Veil. Your blood is almost like a strong drug to my kind. It gives unimaginable power. She touched her own neck. Suddenly she felt very open and unprotected. Then why? Because the Siren's Veil is highly unstable, Benedict interrupted. His gaze locked onto hers with fierce strength. During a human's growing up time, before the exact moment of their 25th birthday, the blood is violently unsafe. If a vampire drinks it, it acts as a total poison to the nerves. The Rothschild syndicate lost 3 of their elders to a siren bloodline in the 1800s because they were too impatient to wait for the girl to grow up. It drove them mad, and they drained her dry before their own organs melted. The air in the room suddenly felt very thin. She fell back against the heavy velvet arm of the chair. The puzzle pieces slammed into place with force. Your father, Benedict continued, his voice hardened with disgust, found out what you were. He knew foreign groups would pay billions to own a siren. He was secretly talking about selling you to a cruel underground coven in Romania. I stopped the messages. You used the stealing as an excuse, she realized. The horror grew in her. The debt was not real. It was the only way to legally take you from his care without starting a worldwide vampire war, Benedict said. He stepped closer, though he still kept a painful 3 feet of distance between them. I claimed you as payment for a debt. I brought you to my estate to protect you, but the cost was binding myself to you. He reached out. His long, cold fingers hovered just an inch from her cheek. He desperately wanted to touch her skin, but he refused to close the gap. The control shaking through his body was a real force in the room. Do you have any idea what these 7 years have been like for me, Cleo? He whispered. His voice cracked. To sleep next to you every night, to hear the uneven beat of your pulse against the silk pillows, to smell the sweet, dizzying scent of your blood coming from your veins, knowing that a single taste would bring me paradise, only to immediately end your life and mine. I had to build a wall of ice around my own heart, because if I let myself show you even one bit of the desperate, all-consuming love I have for you, my control would have broken. Tears streamed down her face. They ruined her expensive makeup. The coldness, The flinching, the separate lives. It was not dislike. It was the complete, painful sacrifice of a starving hunter protecting its prey from its own monster nature. "When you cut your finger in the greenhouse," she sobbed, remembering the pure terror in his eyes. "The scent of your open blood hitting the air nearly broke my mind," Benedict confessed. He dropped his hand. "I had to leave the estate for 3 days just to lock the beast inside me. And tonight, when Dominic touched you, when he threatened to take what is mine." Benedict looked toward the grandfather clock, standing in the corner of the room. The polished brass pendulum swung back and forth. It ate away the final seconds of her 24th year. "Tick, tick, tick, 10 seconds," Benedict whispered. His silver eyes were completely taken over by the deep black once more. The veins beneath his skin darkened. His fangs slid down in a deadly beautiful show of hunter hunger. 10 seconds, Cleo, and the poison leaves your veins. 10 seconds, and you become my queen." The first chime of midnight echoed through the penthouse. It felt like a physical wave. She did not wait for him to ask again. She closed the distance between them. She grabbed the front of his ruined shirt and tilted her head back. She offered the long, pale stretch of her neck to him. "Claim me," she breathed. Benedict let out a sound that was half sob, half roar. His arms wrapped around her waist. He lifted her tight against his hard, marble-cold chest. One of his hands buried itself in her pinned-up hair. He tore the diamond pins away so her dark curls fell in a wave around their shoulders. Dong. The second chime rang out as his mouth came down on her neck. He did not bite right away. He dragged his tongue over the jumping pulse point. He breathed in the scent of her skin, like a man who had just broken the surface of the ocean after drowning for 10 years. The pure respect in his touch made her knees weak, but he held her firm. "Dong. Mine," he growled against her skin. Then his fangs pierced her flesh. She gasped. Her back arched against his arm. She had expected pain, but instead a rush of happy liquid heat exploded from the puncture wounds and flooded her veins. It was the venom, the magical binding agent of the king. Her vision flashed with bright colors. She could suddenly feel him. She felt the empty, painful cave of his starvation. She felt the crushing weight of his loneliness. She felt the fierce, protective love he held for her. As her blood hit his tongue, a violent shiver ripped through his big frame. He drank deeply. He groaned as the siren's veil, now fully grown and safe, woke his sleeping strength. The air in the penthouse began to crackle as static electricity. The glass windows overlooking the London skyline rattled in their frames. The power of a fully fed, fully bonded king radiated from him in terrifying invisible waves. He pulled back slowly. He licked a stray drop of red from his bottom lip. The wounds on her neck had already closed, sealed by his venom. They left 2 perfect silver crescent moon scars. "The mark of the king, Cleo," he whispered. His eyes blazed with a terrifying, beautiful light. "My soul, my queen." Before she could answer, the heavy oak doors of the penthouse were blown completely off their hinges. They splintered into heavy pieces of wood that rained down on the carpet. Benedict instantly pushed her behind him. He shielded her with his body. Standing in the ruined doorway was Vivienne Carmichael. She was flanked by a dozen heavily armed rogue vampires. She held a custom-made tactical rifle loaded with ultraviolet phosphorus rounds. Those were weapons designed specially to kill high-ranking immortals. "Well, well," Vivienne sneered. She stepped over the wreckage. "So the coward finally found his fangs. It is too late, Benedict. The Syndicate watched you shame yourself over a human for 7 years. You are starved. You are weak. Dominic's little act on the terrace was just a distraction to get you away from your guards. The Northern Covens belong to me now." She raised the rifle and aimed it directly at Benedict's chest. "Kill them both. Be quick about it." But Vivienne had made a fatal mistake. She had assumed Benedict was still the starving, controlled ghost he had been for 7 years. She did not realize what now ran through his veins. Benedict did not even flinch. He let out a low, terrifying laugh that vibrated with a sound wave. It shattered the remaining crystal bottles on his desk. "You always were an impatient creature, Vivienne," Benedict said softly. He did not run. He simply raised a single hand. The air pressure in the room dropped so fast her ears popped. The static electricity they had created during the bonding suddenly became a weapon. Invisible mind force, the legendary long-lost magic of a true king, fueled by siren blood, exploded outward. The dozen rogue vampires were thrown backward at the same time. They were pinned hard against the stone walls of the hallway, with such force that she heard their bones break. Vivienne gasped. She dropped her rifle as an invisible hand wrapped around her throat and lifted her 3 feet into the air. His eyes glowed like dying stars. "You have entered my home without permission. You have threatened my queen. Your death will be shown to every syndicate from London to Moscow as a reminder." He closed his fist. Vivienne's body turned instantly to gray ash. It crumbled to the floor in a fine dust before she could even scream. The remaining rogues, pinned to the walls, began to beg for mercy. Benedict ignored them. He turned back to her. The terrifying air of violence instantly melted away as he looked at her face. He gently reached out and traced the silver crescent scars on her neck with a respectful thumb. "We have a mess to clean up," he murmured. His voice was soft and meant only for her. "And a court to rule." "Let them wait," she said. She pulled him down by the front of his ruined shirt and pressed her lips to his cold, perfect mouth. The 7 years of winter were finally over. The king had his queen, and the shadow world would never be the same again. This story teaches us something important about patience and protection. Real love sometimes means waiting a long time and putting the other person's safety first, even when it hurts. In real history, people told vampire stories to explain things they did not understand, like strange illnesses or fear of the dark. The idea of special blood also reminds us that every person is unique and valuable in their own way. Kindness, honesty, and careful choices help keep people safe in any relationship, just as Benedict tried to keep Cleo safe for 7 long years. If you enjoy this video, please give it a thumbs up, share it, and subscribe so you don't miss my next video.